All right. AI for data interpretation and discussion writing in research manuscript. How can you turn your result into insightful, critical, and publishable discussion section? Because we discovered that many papers are rejected, not just because of poor result, but poor discussion that lack in-depth insight. So to start, what is the problem that we're trying to solve today? Why does discussion sections fail to pass peer review scrutiny? The first challenge is when you just restate result without interpreting the result. That discussion section is not valid. Two, when your discussion only presents results and findings without adequately exploring the underlying reasons, the mechanisms that contribute to those outcomes. I keep telling people, don't just uh, write that so effect was observed without giving an in-depth insight into the mechanism behind the observation, right? If you don't do that, your discussion section will be poor. Next is when you have unconvincing claims. Yes, you discuss very well. You even make some critical statements. You went deep, stated the mechanism, but you never linked your findings with other studies. If you do that, your discussion section is still poor because it's only when you relate your studies, you relate your results with that of other studies. That is only when your claims become valid. The last but not the least, when your discussion section lacks logical flow and structure, because you write from left to right, no connection, no synergy between the different sentences within your paragraph, within your discussion paragraph. Discover that your readers will not be able to comprehend fully what you are trying to pass across. So in that case, that discussion section will result into rejection. A study was conducted and discovered that 35 to 50% of post-peer review rejections are attributed to poor presentation of results and discussion. That's to tell you how important the result and discussion section is. So we'll be looking at how AI will help us to overcome this challenge. How AI can solve this problem. I divided this into 4 ways. One, AI can perform data analysis. When you have finished collating your data, either from field work or from chemical analysis, and arrange that data very well using your Excel. When you prompt your generative AI with that result that you've created, it can analyze those data to give you a meaningful result. Number two is that AI can interpret results in a situation whereby you've already analyzed your results. You've performed analysis using um, statistical softwares like SPSS or SAS, or you've drawn graphs using Origin. You can always upload those results on your generative AI model, and then it will be able to interpret that, that result, even if it's very, very complex. Number three is that AI can give insightful discussion. AI can give you deep discussion by linking your findings to underlying mechanism and also comparing it with other literature. You discover that within a short period of time, using AI, you'll be able to interpret very complex data. You'll be able to generate insight and write publishable results section by giving your AI these tasks to do through your prompting. What do we stand to gain? One is that your analysis will be very fast. Analysis that could take you days to accomplish within 1 minute, as long as you have arranged your data set very well and then give every column the right label. Then AI will be able to analyze that data. Let me even say this now. Any analysis that Python will be able to carry out for you, for those of us that are into sciences, then ChatGPT, for example, can perform those analyses, even if it has to do with coding. Next is that you can gain deeper insight from the discussion section that will be generated by your generative AI model. You can also find links to relevant literature from your results using an AI. The last but not the least, clarity and coherence. Your discussion section will have a very clear logical flow, which is one important aspect of result and discussion. Now, I've crafted out 4 steps we can follow using an AI to effectively discuss our results. First thing to do is prepare your result, organize it, and format your data. Usually, we use Excel to organize our data. So that's the first thing to do. Ensure that every column in your table is well labeled. Ensure that there is no ambiguity within the cells, so that when you upload that file to your generative AI model, it can easily scan through and understand the data. 2, which is also very important, is to craft out AI prompts. You should learn how to frame a very clear question for the AI to follow. Give it all the details necessary. Sometimes if I want to interpret results using my friend ChatGPT, my prompt can go as long as 100 words or 200 words, almost the length of a paragraph. Within that paragraph, I'm giving it specific instructions to follow, giving it all the necessary details it requires so that when it's generating an output, it will generate an output the same way I will write. Third step is to review and refine. Check and edit AI generated text because you can never trust the generated text from AI 100%. So always check and edit. You will find one or two loopholes within the paragraph, which using your own expertise, you can now integrate your insight and perspective into it. I've often said on this platform that using AI is a collaborative work in that AI can only help you in some aspect, but you have to provide the critical thinking. It's very, very important, which I will give us an example later on how to go about adding your own critical thought into any generated text from a generative AI model. Next is crafting effective AI prompts. Let's dwell on this slide for long. This is a guide. Ask clear, specific questions that will help to guide the AI to provide detailed and insightful responses. That is all what a very good prompt is all about. Because these generative AIs don't have the capacity to think critically. That is why you have to ask them specific questions, give them specific objectives, give them direction to follow. Without guiding your AI model properly, it will always give you generic responses, which is one of the main things I want us to take home today. There are so many AI models, so many people have access to different AI models. But the question is that, are we really using this AI model the best way possible? Because if you learn how to prompt an AI, you can do virtually everything with this AI. Which is why I will tell us today that prompting engineering is as important as the outputs that you get from AI. So these are the 4 steps I've outlined. One is be specific. If you need ChatGPT, for example, to only cite articles from food chemistry, specifically tell it to link your findings with other studies published by food chemistry. And then you discover that if it doesn't get any article that is related to that study in food chemistry, it will tell you. So try as much as possible to be specific in your command. Organize your data very well, as I've said earlier on. And also give the generative AI details about on how that result came about. Give it all the details. If you need to tell it the method you use, if you need to tell it the specific property of the sample that you treated for you to get this result, be specific. Always mention it in your prompt. It will help the AI to tailor your work to your specific field. Now, when an AI generates a text, there are some questions you need to ask. And if that generated text doesn't answer those questions, then that discussion section is not okay. How do you go about that? In your prompting, you should tell your AI to check other results so that it can compare your findings with those published papers, those published results. By so doing, it's adding credibility to your work. In your prompting, also include seeking for implications. Implication, that's the mechanism behind the findings. Let it always be part of your prompting, your prompt. Number 4 is emphasize clarity and ethics. Tell it to explain the results clearly and ethically with appropriate limitations. So all these 4 items is what your prompt has to satisfy for you to get an effective result section. As an example, under the specific, you can say organize this result, or tell it that this is the result from a survey on stress level of PhD students. Give it details of the result, like I mentioned earlier. Under asking for context, how do these results compare to previous studies? Is very, very important, because that is what gives credibility to your work. If your work doesn't have any literature to, or if your result doesn't have any literature to back it up, it will not be very, very credible. Then under seeking implications, we can say what are the potential implications of these findings? Then explain the result clearly and ethically with appropriate limitations. Now here is an example of a good prompt. Beginning of your prompt, you say analyze the results, linking them to the literature on stress and PhD student well-being, and suggest implications for mental health intervention. Don't just stop there. Link the findings to other studies by identifying consistent patterns, differences, and possible reasons for the findings. Don't just stop there. Provide a clear and ethical interpretation of how workload and support system relate to PhD students' mental health. So you can see in this example, you are specific. You have asked it to link the findings to literature. You have given it details of how the result was obtained. You have also tell it to identify consistent patterns, difference, and possible reasons. That's when compared to other published studies in the same field. So by the time you're able to incorporate all these components into your prompt, then be rest assured that your generative AI will generate a well-structured discussion with in-depth information. Like I always say, using AI is a collaboration. It can only help you, but you provide the critical thinking. I will keep on emphasizing this because that is where the novelty of your study lies. If you don't add any information from your own side, it means your discussion section will not have any novelty. And you all know that without novelty in your text, without novelty in your thesis, there's no way it's going to be accepted. So moving forward, reviewing and refining AI text. Even if you have crafted an effective prompt, you have given it all the necessary details that it requires to produce a well-structured discussion section. you still have to review AI generated text. Why I'm emphasizing on this today is that up to yesterday, I saw an MSc thesis that was rejected because the result does not have a relationship. There is no direct relationship between the result and the hypothesis of the study. How did that happen? Because the student was prompting ChatGPT or any generative AI model that he was using, which kept prompting it without giving it clear direction. And by so doing, this generative AI can always hallucinate. They can always deviate. Even when you are on the same chart. Because they are designed to generate text, they will always generate. As we are prompting, it will generate. As we are prompting, it will generate. You won't know when it has deviated. And then your result will not have any correlation with your set objective or your hypothesis. And writing an article or an article as a whole is a story. What do I mean? In that story, you tell your readers, this is the problem that was on ground before I came into this research. I've discovered that this problem exists. I read different articles that confirm that this problem exists. Then after doing that, I developed a protocol, which is our methodology, to solve this problem. So if you have solved problem, your reader will be expecting that you give them the result of what you have solved. So in a case whereby your result is saying different thing from what your objective states, there is no way you expect that manuscript to be accepted. There is no way you expect that thesis to be accepted. Now this, I'm talking generally, not only relating to AI generated text. Your results section must have a direct relationship with your objectives. Your results section should answer all the questions that your research presented. That is only when your discussion section will be publishable. One, check accuracy. Like I said, even though you have crafted an effective prompt, always confirm. Always confirm. Because this generative AI can confidently generate a reference for you and even include the DOI. And as researchers, once you see an article with a DOI, you are rest assured that this is a valid article. But only for you to confirm. And then DOI will tell you that this DOI is not found, which means that study never existed. But generative AI has put it as a valid reference for you. So you have to check every detail, every one statement that is generated by this AI. you have to confirm. You have to check if it is a new field that you don't have any knowledge about. You can copy the section of that discussion and place it on Google Scholar. Once Google Scholar suggests some studies for you, you can download one or two of those studies to confirm those information, especially information that are critical to your research. Also cross-check with your actual result, because sometimes the interpretation might not be accurate. So go back to your results, check it so as to be sure that there is consistency. Two is verify relevance. Does your result discussion answer the research question? That you have to verify. Does it align with your objectives and hypotheses? If not, you need to prompt your generative AI again to address those issues. And then next, polish the English using any of the grammatical tools like Grammarly. And then last but not the least, which is very, very vital, is to add your own insight. Include your own interpretation. Because over time, I've discovered that there are some phenomena that AI cannot adequately interpret, especially if your findings are very, very novel, which means there are no prior studies on that particular finding that you made. So you have to do some personal searches so as to enhance that discussion section. It's very, very important. What are the guiding questions to look out for before you can finally submit your discussion section? Does the text accurately reflect my data? Is it relevant to your research objective? Are there unclear or overly generic statements? And have I also added my own critical interpretation? Once your discussion section answers these four questions, then be rest assured that your discussion is publishable. You will appreciate these points better when we do one or two practicals. Don't just write a discussion section because you just want to write so that you have something to submit. No, because it's in your discussion section, like I said earlier, that the nobility of your work lies. Is your result section and discussion that will determine if you have just wasted your time all through the research period. It is the result section that will justify the need for that research itself. It is not enough to just carry out an analysis, carry out a survey, and just come and present the results without discussing it critically. Most of these journals, most peer reviewers are interested in your results, especially when it is a research article. You discover that 70 to 80% of their comments will come under the results section, which is why it's very important to ensure that your discussion session is robust enough. So having said this is my last slide. I hope we have picked one or two information from this slide. Later during the practical section, I will give us some personal examples. What I mean by personal examples are the way I was able to uh, interpret and discuss some of my results. So having said that, we can go on a 10-minute break so that we will continue later for the practical section.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, thank you so much, Doctor, for your efforts and for the wonderful presentation. Yeah, and as you have said, and according to the program, we are going to go for a short break, just 10 minutes, or maybe even less than that. Maybe 7 minutes, then we can start by 7:50.
okay, okay.
Yeah, I think it will be okay. So thank you everyone for listening and for your patience. We'll meet by 7:50. So, please don't forget to be drafting your questions. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the either in the WeChat group or in this app chat. Then I will be taking them down for the Q&A session. Thank you very much. Okay, it's 7:50. Doctor, please, you can go ahead and start. Let's start with the practical session.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're all welcome back. So
Mm.
this time around, I'm going to be sharing my screen completely. So now you can see everything on my desktop.
Okay, it's going to be for 50 minutes, and then we open the floor for the questions.
All right. Thank you. All right. So now we are going to be doing practical. I have some three practical or case studies that I want us to look at. First, because most of my previous webinars, I've always been dwelling on uh, engineering related studies. So today I decided to add a table from economics, which is a social science course. And then those in humanities and other developmental studies can also adopt the same method. So first, let's log into our chat. All right. So the first thing to do is to upload your results. This is the way the result is presented in this table. Marginal effect of adoption determinants of solar powered irrigation among smallholders farmers in Oyo State. Oyo State is a region in Nigeria. So you can see the table is well structured. All the columns have the right label, and every variable is presented. So yes. I said first thing is to upload the result. Then you craft out a well-structured and effective prompt. Like this. Say this is the result of a survey carried out in Oyo State of Nigeria. Interpret the results compare my findings that of recently published article with high impact factor. And go further by saying go deeper or give an in-depth analysis of the reason for this outcome. So let's read through this prompt again. It says, this is the result of a survey carried out in Oyo State of Nigeria. Interpret the result, compare my findings with that of recently published article with high impact factor, and give an in-depth analysis of the reason for this outcome. And your generative AIs like ChatGPT has the thinking feature, which enables it to explore the internet before it generates text. So try to activate that deeper thinking mode. The longer it takes to generate text, the better the outputs will be. So let's read what it says. I am pulling in recent peer-reviewed evidence to benchmark your Oyo State results against the latest adoption studies. Then I will tie the pattern back to the local context and economics of solar irrigation. A clear pattern is already emerging in your model. Age is the only determinant that is statistically strong at 5% level, while location matters only weakly. And the classic institutional variables, credit and extension, do not appear to be driving adoption in this sample. I am now checking whether the recent African evidence shows the same pattern or the opposite. Now it has generated a response. Now let's read this response. It said your marginal effect result shows a selective weakly structured adoption pattern rather than a broad-based one. In the Oyo State sample, age is the only determinant that is statistically significant at 5% level. Each additional year of age increases. So you can see the way it presented this discussion. On a normal note, you can't copy this text like this into your manuscript, right? You cannot give it a follow-up prompt. I say, I want to insert this discussion section. into my manuscript. Add in text citation and limit the discussion to 2 paragraphs. So you see, we are being specific now. We're trying to tell ChatGPT that this discussion, I don't just want to discuss it and keep it aside. I want to discuss it so as to add this result to my manuscript. By giving it this instruction, it already knows that the output it should give you should be a manuscript ready discussion session, which means you can copy it out and paste in your discussion section. And then next I said add in-text citations. Normally, if you want to reference, if you want to cite within the text, you cite inside the text. So that's why I said in-text citation. And then limit the discussion to 2 paragraphs, because I discovered that this discussion that was generated by this AI is long, more than 5 paragraphs. There is every tendency that it must have repeated some information. So I will limit it to just 2 paragraphs. Then we prompt it. All right. So we can see it has generated 2 solid discussion paragraphs. Let's read through it. The marginal effect of the marginal effect estimate indicate that adoption of solar powered irrigation among smallholder farmers in Oyo State is shaped more by farmer maturity and localized conditions than by broad household or institutional characteristics. In your results, age, you can still see that it still make a mistake. On a normal note, we shouldn't state in your results here. That is why I often tell us to always read through what your generative AI generates. You can see, even though I'm a scientist, you don't even expect me to know anything in this field, right? But I'm able to point out an error in this text. So I will go further. than by broad household or institutional characteristics. In your result, age is the only determinant that is statistically significant, implying that additional year increases the probability of adoption by about 0.624 percentage points, while Ogunwusi like that. The next thing I want us to verify is the references so that you know how to craft the follow-up prompt. It has given us a link. Once you click on the link, page will be opened depending on what the link is all about, and then you can see that this is a valid reference, creating an enabling environment for solar irrigation ownership in Nigeria. So, like I said, articles like this is important that you download them so as to read to verify some of the claims made by ChatGPT or made by your generative AI. This one is Science Direct. You can also check it out. Now you can see the name. It's exactly, and 2025, which is a very recent article. So this one please confirm. So like that, you have to confirm all the references to ensure that they are valid. But like I said, there are some statements that are wrong within this discussion. So how do we solve this? That's why sometimes I quarrel with ChatGPT. Yes, it's very important that you always tell it when it's wrong. Challenge it. By so doing, you are training your model. The more you challenge it like that, the more it will be careful in generating text. I would say, what is this? Why are you a discussion? As if it's not added a manuscript. You see, it's a response. It says, "You are right." That reads like commentary about your result, not a manuscript ready discussion. I'm fixing it now in two polished paragraphs. You can paste directly into your chapter. Marginal effect result indicates that adoption of solar-powered irrigation among smallholder farmers in Oyo State is influenced by farmers' maturity and localized context than by broad socioeconomic or institutional characteristics. In the model, age, so you can see, it didn't say in your result. It has effectively corrected that statement. So once you confirm every of the references and some of the critical information it generated, like in trying to explain the result, you confirm every statement that is valid. Once you do that, you can copy this text, or seeing this now, it didn't give me the in-text citation, so I can still give it another follow-up this thing prompt. Say what's about the in-text? Maybe it has forgotten citation. So you can see, even though I told you that I want to insert this discussion section into my manuscript, it still makes some errors. Said yes, for a manuscript, the citation should appear inside the discussion paragraph, and then you add the full reference list after the discussion. Here is a two-paragraph manuscript already with in-text citation and reference. So you can see it has added citations. This interpretation is consistent with evidence showing that uptake of solar-powered irrigation in sub-Saharan Africa, often constrained by uncovered rates, weak incentives, lack of capacity, limited market development, and inadequate local value claims, even where the technology is technically promising. It cited this author, which means this author also discovered or reported the same scenario. Here it says, for example, Mueller et al. Reported from Ghana that farmers are. So you can see how this discussion is grounded, is solid, is in-depth. There is no reviewer that will read through this discussion and reject it outrightly. No. And see the references, which you can always verify. So we can say, this is why I often tell people that I can write manuscript in any field about any topic, even if I have zero knowledge of that field. All right, let's go to another example. This is the result of my analysis. This is the result that gave me my breakthrough in research, because my research direction is to reduce anti-nutritional factors in food, specifically using yard-long beans as my product, sample product. But in reducing these anti-nutritional factors, I am to use blanching techniques, which involves the application of heat. Then there is a problem that I face then. How can I simultaneously degrade this anti-nutritional factor, which is lectin to be specific, while maintaining essential nutrients, which are also heat sensitive? So after my analysis, this result came up, and then I became more confused because ChatGPT couldn't explain what happened. It could only tell me that heat blanching reduced the lectin content by this percent, by this percent, by this percent, possibly due to the denaturing of lectins because they are proteins. But it couldn't give me critical insight into why we have a sharp reduction in hemagglutinational age, and then suddenly there wasn't any significant reduction again after second blanching cycle. But after the second blanching cycle, there was another reduction. It couldn't fully explain what happened at this point. So I became more confused. Then I had to search for solution elsewhere. So God help me, I laid my hands on an article named Plant Lectins, Handymen on the cell surface. And then reading through that article, I discovered that uh, the lectins in plant cells are more concentrated at the cell surface so as to prevent or to act as signals against any external stress. But while more of the lectins are at the surface, 50% of the lectins are within the plant cytoplasm. That's within the cell cytoplasm. Then I activated my critical thinking mode. This sharp reduction of about 50% of the lectins after the first blanching cycle was as a result of the heat treatment, which degraded virtually all the lectins at the cell surface. But because the cell was still intact after first blanching cycle, which we discovered from our SEM images, those lectins within the cell cytoplasm were still very much active. But after the second blanching cycle, there was a visible crack, which meant that the heat has now been able to penetrate into the cytoplasm and degraded some of the lectins within it, which is why we had another sharp decline. The day I discovered this, I was very, very happy because it was like a big stone that was rolled away from my head. So with this discovery now, I was now able to prompt my ChatGPT rightly by giving it these details. And then before you know it, it crafted out a well-structured uh, discussion section for me. By the way, this article has already been published. The next example I will give us is this. Imagine this result is presented before you, or you've been able to analyze your data, and then you have this result. It looks very, very complex, I must confess, which will be very difficult for me to interpret without an external guide. So what do I do in this case? I will upload this whole figure. By the way, this result is divided into 4 parameters, 4 group of parameters. One is the pectin content, which is the water soluble pectin, chelate soluble pectin, and sodium soluble pectin. And then the cellulose and the hemicellulose, which is B. C is the internal moisture condition. And then D is the hydrogen protein. But because I've given each of these parameters a specific label, I can prompt ChatGPT to only discuss this result that is labeled A. I can prompt it to only discuss this result that is labeled C. Now, prompt it to only discuss this result that is labeled B. So what do I do? I'll upload the results. So let's craft out a nice prompt. Remember, your prompt must be as detailed as possible, must be as specific as possible. Has to be very, very specific. You have to give it specific instructions on what you want. Don't just tell it to interpret this result. It will definitely interpret the result, but to only interpret it at the surface. It won't go deeper. Also, in your prompting, tell it everything necessary it needs to know on how this result came about. So for example, I will tell it this is the result of my personalizing it. Add long beans. subjected to four cycles of vacuum in or and figure A is the result of 13 fractions. Water soluble 13 labeled as WSP chelate soluble 13 labeled as CSP. Then 3 sodium carbonate soluble soluble 13 labeled as NSP. Then let's give it an instruction. Interpret and discuss figure A. Compare my findings with related studies with with recent studies published in food. Maybe I'm thinking of publishing this work in food chemistry. So I'll tell it published in food chemistry. Findings with recent studies published in food chemistry. That are related and results. Critically discuss the mechanism behind the observed. You can go further and say add in-text citation. So I can copy directly So you can see my prompting is almost as long as a paragraph, giving it all the specific details it needs and giving it directions to follow. So can enter. Like I said, allow it to think. Even if you to think for 30 minutes, allow it to think. The longer it takes, the better the results. That I'm reading the figure first so I can describe the actual pattern in WSP, CSP, and NSP. Then I will anchor the discussion to recent food chemistry papers with matching mechanism. You can see it's searching different websites, different journals. Said I have read the actual pattern in figure A. The main signal is a shift from tightly bound pectin towards more labile fractions as treatment intensifies. As treatment intensity increases, with the strongest loss occurring in the sodium carbonate soluble fraction. Here is a manuscript ready discussion you can paste directly into your paper. Wow, so sweet. And funny enough, some of the reference is given are articles I know very well. Like this, I'm even an author in this article. So we can see that it has drafted out a well structured discussion section. And let's read through it. Figure A shows that pectin fractions of yam long beans were markedly redistributed by vacuum steam post blanching. In general, NSP remained the dominant fraction across treatment, but it declined progressively with stronger processing, while CSP showed a moderate reduction and WSP remained comparatively low. Relative to the control, the blanched samples display a clear depletion of sodium carbonate soluble pectin, especially at the more intense treatment, indicating that the tightly bound covalently linked pectin fraction in the primary cell wall and middle lamella was progressively destabilized. So you can see it has gone deeper to give the mechanism behind the observed result. A transient maintenance or slight increase in soluble pectin under some milder blanching conditions suggests that part of the insoluble photopectin matrix may have been converted into ionically bound pectin before further degradation. By contrast, the lack of so now let's say I get interested with this statement. I need to be sure that this statement is valid. I can copy that statement, then go to Google Scholar, which is our main tool for referencing, and paste. You can see several articles. You can see this article talking about chelate soluble pectin and degradation. So I can download this article to verify that information if it is true. And by so doing, I'm also adding knowledge to myself, because we don't just write, we don't just use AI to just be writing without assimilating some of the important information. So it's very, very important that we check and cross-check every statement and also confirm all the references to be sure that what it's linking your findings to is valid, because that same scenario was reported by that author it's cited. Next, it says mechanistically, the observed pattern can be explained by a combined effect of rapid heating, pressure fluctuation, and repeated pulse-induced structural stress on the pectic network under mild condition. Under mild condition, under mild to moderate blanching intensity, thermal activation of endogenous pectin methylase may promote the methylation of mubalaturonal, creating free carboxyl group that temporarily favor calcium-mediated cross-linking. However, a treatment severity increases as treatment severity increases across repeated vacuum stim pulses. This initial restructuring is overtaken by pectin depolymerization, including hydrolysis and beta elimination of galacturonan backbones, cleavage of natural sugar claims, and weakening the middle lamella. So statements like this too, it even ought to cite this statement, but for one reason or the other, no, it didn't cite. So I can copy this statement, go to my Google Scholar, then search for it, related articles. You can see the polymerization, middle lamella, pectin chains. So the context is similar. In that case, I can download this article so as to get more insight on this phenomenon, to be sure that yes, this phenomenon that ChatGPT added to the discussion section is valid, and I can also add that reference here. It's very, very important. If you download those articles, you could get more information that will even help you to add more critical insights into the discussion section.
Sorry, doctor, to interrupt. The time has reached, but it's like I just saw that you are making many good points. That's why I just kept quiet. We are giving you additional 5 minutes.
Okay, okay, okay. I'll listen. Thank you. Thank
Okay,
you.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we can see that this generative AI has given us a well-structured discussion section with correct logical flow and in-depth insight. Right, so we can copy this discussion section into your manuscript and then use your Grammarly to paraphrase if need be, and then add one or two information based on the new insight you get gained from those downloaded articles. And then I assure you that your article will be published. Not only accepted, it will be published at long run. So, having said this, I'm sorry for taking our time. I can now stop sharing my screen so that I will go for a 10-minute break before the Q&A session.
Okay, thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we can even say the break should be 5 minutes. If there are questions, please, the members they should drop their questions in either the chat here or the our group, WeChat group. And after that, then if there are people that want to ask question directly, they can raise their hands, and we'll take note of that and follow them one by one. So by 8:40, let's say 8:48, we'll start the question and answer series. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are now going to start with the questions and answers Q&As. But before we start, I would like to share this message I just received, Doctor. It's like I will say a like maybe testimony from a friend who is also doing his, is it masters or PhD? I'm not so sure, but he texted me privately
Okay.
that he's very much grateful for the presentations and for all the efforts you put in for these wonderful presentations. And he
Thank
was able to draft a review manuscript and he has submitted, now waiting for the reviewers. So I think this is actually
yes.
a very good achievement. And I also told him if there is any issues, he can kindly reach out if maybe there are some comments from the reviewers or the editors.
Okay.
So I think this is a message I will have to deliver to you and to appreciate your efforts for all that you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and now we are going to start with the questions. Let's start with the one that AMB wrote in the chat. Maybe you can also, if you are seeing the question there, he
Okay,
said,
ABM. It said,
yeah,
do
AB,
ChatGPT and other AIs have access to various journal database, especially those that are subscription based, or are
yeah.
they citing reporting existing works from the papers titled and abstract, which are usually open source? Uh, I would say they don't have access to the database that are subscription journals that are subscription based, right? They don't have access to those database. However, most of the informations you need to cite are within the abstract of a study. Additionally, even though some of those articles are subscription based, there are one or two sites that will have those articles free. Like you can have free access to them, which you as a researcher might not be able to locate them. But incorporating using an AI, it can search out those articles. Once it gives you the link, if you have access to downloading those articles from the journal, then you can go ahead. While in some cases you might not have access to download, then you look for another reference.
Okay,
So,
thank you for your response. We don't have any question in the WeChat group. It's only a comment by MS Salu. He said, thank you very much, Sir Samuel, for the wonderful presentation. We are indeed grateful. So now coming back to the next question in the chat. Uh, yeah, Doctor, you can read Mr. Francisco Fortune.
okay. You said thanks for your amazing presentation. Thank you, Fortune.
Yeah.
Mine is related to the next step of your work. After making sure that what AI provides us as discussion or order, what are we supposed to do? Copy and paste, or we need some modification or adjustment to make it human? If yes, what humanizer do we use? Also, if your research is novel and no paper has already been published to discuss, what are we supposed to do exactly in that case? Now, first, these are very good questions. Thank you for that. If you have been following us from our first webinar, you will know that I've always mentioned when you get a good text generated by your AI, then copy to your Word document, you need to use Grammarly to paraphrase. And also you need to find one or two information to add. Or even though ChatGPT said this is manuscript ready, we still need to make some modification. And talking about humanizer, I don't really encourage anybody to use humanizer because one, you are using an AI to humanize what an AI wrote. It's not another human being that will do the humanization for you. It's still AI. So anything that humanizer can do, your ChatGPT can also do. Your Grok can also do it. Your Gemini can also do it. It only takes you to give it the instruction. If you want your text to be humanized, tell prompt ChatGPT to make it humanized, and then it will get it done. You don't need any other external humanizing uh, software to help you to humanize the text. As long as you've paraphrased with Grammarly, you've added your own input, then that text is good to go. And then in your next question, you said, if your research is novel and no paper has already been published to discuss, yeah, I will give an example. My own research, though the research field is not novel, but the research I carried out on yard long beans was novel, in that no one has used vacuum steam post blanching before to degrade anti-nutrients in yard long beans, right? Which was a problem to me then. I looked for related articles. I didn't get until I refined my prompt. I told it to relate it to other studies, even though not the same material, I stated it in that prompt. And then before you know it, it search the internet and find related studies from soybeans, related studies on uh, green beans, which I was able to use to explain what we observe in my land beans, because they are all in the same family. So that's what uh, I would suggest you to do if you are faced with similar situation.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Please, this one is asking how he can join the WhatsApp group. I think you can share your contact, then he will send you a request. You can add him.
Okay, I will share my WeChat, no, WhatsApp this number,
Okay.
so that you can add me on WhatsApp.
Okay. Mr. Emmanuel Odue Melam, you can please unmute yourself and ask your question. I know I've seen you have raised your hand for some time before we continue with the questions in the chat.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening, doctor.
Yeah, thank you for your insightful information.
Thank you.
They are really important. I really appreciate it. Let's say if there are different citing patterns, like the
Yes.
American Association of American Psychological Association, that is the APA,
APA, yeah,
and so many other ones. So
yeah.
how do you, or let's say your school, there's a particular citing style your school uses. How do you streamline it? How do you prompt them AI to give you citation based on that style?
You also state it in your prompt.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see I said also add in-text citation, right?
Oh,
So you can add another layer
okay.
using APA format,
Format, okay.
using IEEE format.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
And then it will get it done for you.
Yeah. So secondly, let's say a proposal let's say AI gives you just 8 citations. Is it okay for a proposal, or can you prompt him more to give you more?
Proposal. 8 references for a proposal is very, very poor, because in your introduction alone you have more than eight
Citation.
references.
References.
Then talking about your literature review, where you have more of the references. You understand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you need to prompt him more to generate more references. Or like you thought,
No.
like you said, you can copy and paste in your scholarly
Yeah,
Google
but
Scholar.
you know, I don't encourage us to prompt ChatGPT to write everything.
Oh,
You understand? If you follow us from our first class, I said let this generative AI, if for in a proposal, for example, let it generate the framework of the proposal. Then you start developing the proposal section by section.
okay.
So in each of the section, we will have paragraphs. Some sections you have 2 paragraphs, some sections you have 3 paragraphs. So each of those paragraphs will have 2 or 3 citations, sometimes even up to 6.
Okay.
So if you go like that, you discover that before you finish your proposal, you have close to 30 to 40 references. And the
References.
more valid references you have, the more credible your
Work
article is.
is.
You understand? And also advise that your references should be up to date.
Yeah, within 5 years.
Yeah, within 5 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Emmanuel, I think in addition to what Doctor has responded to, in this issue of references, I normally advise people not to just copy the references from the given by the ChatGPT. In fact, it is even better for the ChatGPT to give you the papers or journals, a downloadable and verifiable journals you can download and see according to the citation it gives you in
Yeah.
the in its response. So from there you can just establish your own references instead of
Okay.
just if you ask ChatGPT to give you just random references, it can give you some wrong ones. So it's better even download from the site, then you see if it is reliable or relevant to your work, then you cite.
Oh,
Yeah, thank you very much for your question, and thank you, Doctor, for your response. We are going to continue in the questions in the chat. Masuru Gumi said, thanks for your time and contribution. My question is, did the doctor share video link for the last webinar? Also, when are we getting link video today webinar for today's webinar?
Yeah, last webinar was shared. It's only the practical session that I couldn't share because of a challenge I faced that day.
Yeah.
Then for this seminar, I will process the video, and probably by Monday it will be ready before I will share the link.
Okay, thank you very much. There's another question. My question is, based on your experience, is there significant differences between the free version and paid version of AI ChatGPT in terms of responses or feedback? Of course, Doctor, I think you
Yeah,
respond
yeah,
just
there's
briefly.
a great difference. There's a
Yeah.
great difference, especially in the generated images. There's a great difference.
And also uploading of maybe papers, PDFs or something.
Yes,
It
and
has
apart from
limitations.
that, you know,
Mm.
free versions are limited. You have limited prompts.
Yeah. He already said it in the question. He said, I learned that some AIs have limitations regarding their usage. Of course, the free version will not be the same with the paid version, definitely. Okay. So could you please share some relevant prompts to be used for humanization of AI text again using the ChatGPT?
It's just to state it. Even the prompt I just taught us today alone is humanized. Has humanized the output that you will get from a generative AI. But you can go further and also instruct it within that same prompt. Make it sound human, or make it, or humanize it, or humanize the discussion. It will be able to tailor the tone to that of a human, right? And then you are good to go.
Okay, okay. There are no questions in the word chat, no questions in the chat, also no hands raised. So I think we have come to the end of this important session. Thank you so much, Doctor, for your efforts and help, Yoranda, to, yeah, somebody said to humanity. Yeah, so thank you very much, and thank you everyone for your time and for your attention. We'll try to also come up with another webinar in due time, and we'll inform the house, God's willing. Thank you, everyone. Doctor, you can maybe give a closing remark on behalf of.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm very, very grateful, and I'm very, very happy to see all of you guys this evening and this afternoon for those that are in Nigeria. And I hope that we'll keep doing better. And then, as testimonies will be coming in from various angles, I hope that our articles will be published, our thesis will get accepted, and then ultimately, I wish us breakthrough in our research endeavors. So, as Dr. Umar has rightly said, we will also organize another webinar, which will be communicated to us in due course. So having said that, we can now end this section. And I wish all of you guys all the best in your various endeavors.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Doctor, and thank you, everyone. Have a good night and have a nice day for the people in Nigeria.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah, we'll share the link. That's it. Yeah.
Jesus.